Hey, I thought I would show the results of some very, very extensive testing that I did. Um, I wanted to settle for myself and see for myself which was better, the air pot or the moisture preserving pot. Very quickly in my testing, I found that the workers could not really keep up with the number of pots that they're working without with the normal game, without any kind of mods. These guys cannot really handle 8 pods. You'll notice if you assign them 8 pods, there's always a couple of plants that they're not able to handle. They'll finish getting one, and there's already one or two more waiting for them. Um, so my first setup was really basic. I ran eight of each. And the AirPods barely lost. I sort of expected as much, but there was some more interesting discovery of the workers always, they never were idle. I was trying to make everything so perfect. I even used a mod to set their idle point right here, and they never needed their idle point. It didn't matter. Um, so it begged the question, well, I'd already tested so much other stuff also that I'm not going to get into. I know these spots work like they say they do. They do indeed grow faster. They do drain water faster. But what if that would be a benefit if they had less pots and weren't wasting their time rewatering plants they couldn't handle? Um, you know, so I ran more and more multi-day tests. Um, And I finally settled on this final big test. So I've already eliminated 8 pots as you don't need 8 pots for a worker. Now, if you're running a mod that improves workers or something, sure, maybe. Um, but if you're not doing any of that, um, take a look at your workers when they're harvesting. You'll see that there's one or two plants waiting for them, if not three. Um, what good is it to have? And they're also never getting to be idle. So what if you were to reduce that by one? Would it actually make an impact? So we answered a lot of questions. We did a lot of testing. Um, so on this side we've got the air pots. On this side we've got the moisture reserving. We got 7 pots, starting with 7, 6, and 5. Same thing over here, 5, 6, and 7. You see how I set their idle points? It really didn't matter. It did matter maybe a little bit for this guy. He actually was a little idle, and uh, but anyway, let's see the results. This is 5 full days from morning as soon as you wake up all the way till 4 a.m. and we're at 4 a.m. I have the raw footage of the entire test. It's just going to be monotonous and boring. So 7 AirPods, 864 product. This test should only be applied to marijuana seeds grown with at least one product, I'd say fertilizer, and extra loam soil. You might get a little bit of variation if you start doing something else. So, again, 864. 6 pots, 900. Not dramatically different, admittedly over 5 days. 936. I can tell you that this is the 5 pot setup. I can tell you 4 pots was less. I've already done multi-day test and eliminated 4 pots. The worker ends up idle, sort of like this guy ended up idle. So our best number over here on the AirPot side was 936. Let's start at the top end here, 948. So this guy managed to pull off one extra harvest across 5 days, and 936. And this is the 6 pot setup. 6 pot. 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 6 and this guy could not compete. He had a little bit too much idle time, sort of like when I ran previous tests, and I realized that 4 pots was not enough. So one of this was quite an interesting test for me. Air pots aren't so bad. There just doesn't need to be as many of them. I was really curious if you could get that advantage. Also curious if the advantage of not having to read water would how that would work out. Um, I mean, it is a 5-day test. It's longer than most people's tests that they've ran, but our best results were right here at 936 with 5 air pots versus 6 air pots. They were equal, and I would consider this equal. We got a whole one single harvest. If I rerun this test, maybe this guy doesn't quite get that harvest. Um, and you can see our setup here is perfectly equal. I used a few mods to make sure we didn't need certain things. I'll increase the stack size, things of that nature. And we've got tiny employees. Um, that was because I kept having tests get broken by workers bugging out. We had this guy like not want to do one of his pots, things of that nature. I'm sure if you played enough, you've seen that. Um, anyway, I would say this only applies if you're growing. It doesn't matter what kind of weed seed, but only growing weed, fertilized, extra long life soil. I'm not going to probably test this other soils. There's other things you can test. But it's something to think about, and I'd encourage you to do your own testing. One thing I'll also note, a lot of people already maybe know this or you've heard this. I tested the Mark 1 packing station versus the Mark 2. This is with the handler, obviously. The Mark 1's better in every case. The takeaway would be never, at least until Tyler makes any kind of change, current version as of this date, the Mark II station, never assign it to a handler. Give them a Mark 1. It is, for bagging baggies, it is twice as fast. A regular ass packing station. Jars, I don't know if it's exactly twice as fast. I suspect it is. It is significantly faster. I didn't get the exact number. And just for ones, a comparison, I did throw a brick press in here, and it definitely beats the hell out of these. We expected that and knew that. I did do some other testing real quick. These lights, the words on these lights, as far as how this says it grows 30% faster. The words on the other lights, I don't think I have any here. They're at my other setup. All this is true. The water preserving pots, do they work how they say they work? All of that works exactly how it says it works in the text. Could not find any kind of wrong tooltips or anything that was not correct, which is great. AAA games can get this right, and here Tyler is kicking ass. I don't know if there's anything else to mention. The lights, the pots, all the numbers were the same. Pot seeds all grow at the same rate. Very easy test to replicate. Obviously a lot of this stuff was expected. We wanted to eliminate any variables, and there's no way we can make this 100% fair. We can just do our best. If they've got an extra pot, they're going to have to walk to it. So I don't know how I could not have them have to walk to that any further. In a real setup, it's actual practice. This extra step maybe hurts one of these. It's the best I think we can get. Because you're going to end up having to build this in somewhere and apply this when you make your builds. And We just tried to minimize any variable that we could. Um, so this were the mods I had installed. A lot of these don't matter. Reshelves, just so I didn't have to have a handler. Better stacks, just so that we didn't have to worry about stack sizes. That doesn't affect any of this test. Employee mover was to set the idle point. Minimap mod mainly just so I had a clock. Tiny workers and void employees. I don't know if I needed void employees, but it was equal across the board. It seemed to avoid issues. I had 2 tests ruined, but I still got usable data out of them before we had to run. And that's one reason I did not run 4 pots. Already ran a couple of tests, and no, 4 pots is not enough. I guess I already mentioned that. I sort of end up like this little dude here. So next time, I was a person that always configured my guys with 8 moisture preserving pots. And I was under the impression that these guys, them running out of water was costing me. Well, when you have 8 of them, that is the case. The takeaway here is you probably shouldn't have, you shouldn't have 8 of them. If you see your employees never being idle and there's full plants always sitting there, couples full plants always sitting there to grow, that was what was sort of made me get to this point. Anyway, I encourage you to do your testing. If you find something different than me or more or interesting, let me know. I've heard people, debate using different soils, considering this technically costs twice as much per use. But the employee isn't having to replace the soils. I don't know how much difference that can make. I'm not using PGR. This is for this specific setup. Now, this very well would not apply to coca seeds because they take so much longer to grow. I do not know the number. I don't know if it'll be a full 8 pots. I haven't done that test yet. So if you do a test that is, very, very fair, like we set up here, I'd love to. I'm interested in the results of that. Drop a link in the comment or something. All right, thanks.